I have this story. I remember when I first landed sort of my big TV spot, and I'd been up against some people that I really respected. It was amazing that I got the gig. I remember methodically working in this sort of mindset of how I felt like I was supposed to do the work. I felt like, in advertising land, I was supposed to do storyboards. I was supposed to, do takes and use clappers and kind of make it official the way it's supposed to be. Funny enough, up to that point, I'd used clappers and takes so infrequently, but it was a big client, it was a big agency, and I thought, hey, this is the way I'm supposed to do it. And it's not to say that that's not the right way. What I learned though was that it wasn't my way, and it didn't feel right. I remember it was a 3-day shoot, and on the last day we're on the top of a mountain, and I remember thinking, holy shit, I hadn't done any of my way of filming, which normally is where I sort of set up a scenario and then I dive into it. I stuck to my storyboards, I did the takes, and I didn't do anything else until that last scene. On the last day, we were on the top of the mountain, the sun was setting, AD was trying to get me to wrap up as soon as possible, and I was able to finally run around. And to this day, I sort of look back at that as a bit of a failure or a failed sort of experience for me, in that I abandoned who I was, abandoned what I felt was sort of right for me, and I took on what I felt like I was supposed to do. It doesn't matter if you go through film school or if you learn on your own. I think the big divide is in the people who realize at some point in their life, some people early on and others later, the most important thing about this craft and creativity and filmmaking, and when I say this, it sounds almost obvious, is how important it is for you to be you. Yes, there's the technical things you have to learn, the basics you have to learn, you have to understand exposure and composition and color palettes and all this kind of stuff. I can't sort of stress enough that I've learned in my life how important it is to sort of go by your feeling, to be you and to film that way. And if it means storyboarding and carefully thinking of everything, that's great. I knew early on that I had a more of a journalistic, documentarian sort of approach to things. And I've been lucky enough to be able to transfer that sort of into commercial work. The way I like to do it is to prepare to create that box. What are the conditions gonna be? What's the season? What's the lighting? What's the different sort of scenarios? What's the location? These are all things that I don't just drive up, arrive, and we wing it. I do like the idea of sort of preparing for that box. And then once that box prepared, it's okay for it to evolve, for it to change, for it to shift. More often than not, half of that kind of goes out the window. But that guiding backbone structure is really important for me, is my methodology to sort of allow myself to film by feel and to find moments and to find little nuances and find little details and just go with it. I've always admired, maybe through my parents, journalists and photojournalists and documentarians who have this amazing ability to get close to people, and it's that closeness that allows for the stories and the images to become powerful. You think about war photography, you think about even intimate stories on families. If all those sort of images were taken on a telephoto lens, from a distance, physical and emotional, I think it would sort of tell a different story. And so if your pictures aren't good enough, then you're not close enough. At first, I think I took it at face value of physical closeness. You look at Robert Capa's photos, you look at James Noctuay's photos, you can't get those images without being within 5 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet from the subject. That closeness is what lets me as the viewer be drawn into their story and to their life, not because they were taking these images from, a mile away with a telephoto lens and just sort of voyeuristically capturing these lives. They were in it with them. maybe I'm in a situation where the sun's going down, or it's starting to rain, it's starting to snow, there's a baby being born, there's a cow being born, there's animals approaching. It's hard, like how do you make sense of that all? How do you frame the perfect frame, and how do you feel it out? And one thing that I think I have unconsciously done, but only recently realizing consciously that it's sort of helping me, is to really sort of have a sense of priority of what's the most important in that moment. And it kind of comes down to the values of who you are, the story you want to tell, you as a filmmaker. And in a bigger picture, it goes back to this whole idea of just making sure that, you know, filmmaking is about you being you. In those moments, you gotta prioritize. Is it lighting? Is it the beauty that's the most important? Is it what's happening? Is it the story? Is it the people that's the most important? Is it the acting? What is it? Is it that the set design has to be perfect before you go ahead and shoot that? I've shot scenes where my camera settings were off and I knew it. I didn't have the right lens, but it was so important that I catch it in the right light, or it was so important that I catch the right moment of the people doing something. And knowing that, I think, helped, because I knew that was the feeling I wanted to capture. When things are sort of seemingly chaotic, there's a way to organize that in your own head and make sense of it all. I talk about like you just have to film and feel it out, or you gotta film by feel, and I just can't, I'm trying my best here to not make it sound so esoteric. You know, there needs to be a sort of a given confidence to do so. And all the people I looked up at, you know, when I started was often photojournalists. So Sebastian Salgado, James Noctway, they all had this sort of confidence in being close to people, to feeling the scene, to feeling the picture, to getting that moment, to capturing a story. And I was always sort of envious of that. Didn't know how I can do it, didn't know what the right path was. You know, I kind of chose my own path, and I hope you do too. If there's anything that I would love to pass on, I think it's this notion that if this is who you are and this is how you do it, it's okay. And at the end of the day, it's the final film and the story and the message that's important, not how you do it.